afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting, it's 12:40, the meeting is going to be called to order. We'll begin with a roll call of the board members. Mary Bender. Present. Bianca Brewster. Gilbert Gonzalez.
Here.
Victor Lopez. David Garcia, present. Lucy Infante.
Present.
Angelica Ancira.
Present.
And Sandra Solis.
Present.
Did I miss anyone? Oh,
Natalie Lewis.
I'm sorry, Miss Lewis. I don't have it.
I was a little late last time, I went to where we used to hold them. So, that was the previous call.
Yeah, that's why she's not on the minutes.
All right, we have a forum, and so we have, we move on to item number 3, which is, do we have any public comments that have been registered?
Yes, we do have public comments.
And the entity or the citizen presenting?
She didn't provide her name.
Oh, okay. And just as a reminder, we have a 3-minute limit per speaker, but you may proceed.
Okay. Do I just read the item?
Yes.
Okay. Review citizens' concern about the ACO's proper interaction to the public and treatment to animals, as they are expected to care and protect animals in need as well as everyone else working on the shelter.
So delete, the person that wanted to provide public comment is not here,
No.
and they did not provide a written statement,
No.
so,
Well, I thought they did. She was reading from it.
and I mean,
I just read
that's
the-
it, there's no details on.
I just read the item.
Right. So how would we know the context or the details on this concern if we don't have a written statement from them or they're not present?
Well, I thought you had the written statement.
She sent the email to me, which is what I added to the agenda.
So you added a copy of the email?
No. I didn't read the email.
Isn't there a procedure that they submit their comments online in writing?
Right, but I thought that's what she was going to read,
So
and she's
that's
just reading
an
the
email.
item.
Oh.
So was the email just this little tidbit and they were supposed to come and present?
Not that I know of.
No.
No, nobody told me about.
No, I'm not asking like if anybody, no, but my question, did they say that they were coming?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
They didn't reply back. I did ask.
Okay. I mean,
And they didn't provide a name either, so we don't
No.
know how to.
Anonymous.
Alright. Any other, citizen comments?
No.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of last month?
Judge, may I interrupt? I have just a question, there's a gentleman sitting in the back, I don't know, I just wanna know who they are.
Oh, Laredo Morning Times.
I'm sorry?
reporter.
He's a reporter for Laredo Morning Times.
Alright. Welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
Alright, any other comments regarding public comments on this? And again, moving on to item number 4, has everyone had an opportunity to review last month's minutes?
Who is Gilbert Garcia? Or do we mean Gilbert Gonzalez?
Gilbert Gonzalez.
Okay.
Who was that?
There's a couple of times.
On the motion.
On the motion,
Oh, I see.
and then underneath, under MB, there's once in B.
before approving or putting a motion to approve the minutes, I'd like to make a motion just to correct. Who keeps the master list? To correct the last name for Tudor Gonzalez in last month's minutes.
Who's drafting the minutes right now? I'm sorry.
Me.
Alright, so I second.
All right.
So you would need to notate the correction, and typically in other committees, for which public health is the liaison, the committee usually has a secretary that annotates meetings for the members. Just, we're able to support when there's a vacancy, but typically it's a member of the committee that,
I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of this a little bit. I know that there's been discussions before for, the board bylaws and the actual positions on the boards and all of that. I really feel like with this type of items being brought to our attention so often, that we should really probably maybe in the next 30 to 60 days really come up with the board,
The
board
bylaws.
guideline. Yes. That way we have reference just in case things like this come up periodically, that, oh, we can go back and say, oh, this person's, the secretary, oh, this person's here, oh, this, is part of the board, bylaw. But we've been operating without it for a pretty long time. I don't know if there's a draft already written, I'm not sure, I was never given anything, but I think we should maybe revisit. If there is a draft, we can review it, cause it's probably been a while.
Because that was a draft, right, Joe?
I did send you all the draft that we had before, and then I think they made some corrections, and we were gonna get approved of them, and
Is that approved by our people?
no, it hasn't been,
By the, okay.
but I can forward them again.
Yeah, like, if you wanna forward that on, cause I definitely think, we should, and then we'll do it over to legal, and ultimately it's a board, so you guys, so.
Yeah, good idea. Is Cindy Reese no longer on the
No.
committee?
Well, the second was to amend the last name from Garcia to Gonzalez.
We'll take care of that, like, right now, yeah, we'll take care of that right now, but moving forward, we'll
All right.
probably have a assigned secretary or whatnot.
Yeah, and basically you move and say,
Yeah, to make the corrections, and my suggestion was gonna be to be done manually now, and that way we can approve the minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
But that was gonna be my suggestion, so that we could approve the minutes, and then, just on a side note, Ms. Pender and I were having that conversation about approving the bylaws before the next meeting.
Oh,
To have
go for
something-
it, go, like, I'm,
To have, well,
alright.
have a draft that we can present
Okay,
on that, we were exchanging information on that.
Because if I remember correctly, the last time we went over that, the one that took the draft, after they were gonna work on it, it was the representative from the DA's office. But we never heard back.
I have it here, like, that it was revised and they sent it, they gave us a copy, and
And then there were,
so I have it here, the bylaws.
If you have an extra copy.
Yes,
my-
I'll email them to you all.
Well, that's part of the problem is that I guess the firewall at the county where I'm at, I don't get emails, a lot of emails. I don't get the agenda, I don't get the notice, I have to get a text message, which is fine, but I don't have any way of undoing the firewall at the county, so.
I'll provide you with a copy.
Thank you. So, all right. Is there then a motion to approve last month's minutes?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Any against? All right. And the motion passes and the last month's minutes are approved. Moving on, subsection 5, discussion and possible actions. Oops, I'm sorry. discussion and make recommendations on how rescue organizations are selected and approved to tag dogs and cats from the LACS.
It was brought up, by me. And, this concern, is based on a lot of reports on social media about rescues, hoarding animals and mistreating them, neglecting them. And, I guess my concern here will be, we're desperately trying to find, rescues that will help us avoid the euthanasia of the animals, but we also need to be concerned, I think, for the sake of the welfare of the animal, where is this animal gonna end up? And there's been several reports in the media, in the newspaper, it happened in New York.
Anything related to Laredo?
Anything related to Laredo, no, but it can happen to Laredo. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there was cases in New York where animals came from the Rio Grande Valley Humane Society, and there were 48 dogs and 11 cats that a rescue organization in New York ended up taking, and unfortunately, last month, or at the beginning of this month, they ended up getting cited, and they're gonna go through sentencing because they were abusing the animals and neglecting them. And the concern is that the name of the organization that was doing this, that actually had animals from Texas, it was Empathy Animal Rescue. And one of their pictures in social media when they were leaving Harlingen, Texas, it was from Austin, That's Alive. So these organizations provide transportation to other rescues, but I think it's by doing our due diligence, we can help. I'm be more than glad to help out, trying to scan, where these animals are going. Are there any reports with the animal control? Are with veterinarians in the area, depending on where they're going, in order to prevent. Because I think every life that we save, it's worth, going through that process.
So I'm gonna kind of interject here, and while I appreciate that, it is a two-step process. How Rio Grande Valley or, how they did theirs, I don't know. But it's two-step. I'm not gonna rely on another agency to vet the animals, which includes APA, it includes Operation Kindness, it includes whatever third party. They are required to fill out our applications, they're required to give us the 501c3, they are required to give the vet, whatever veterinarian they use. So there is a process that we have for screening these rescue agencies. This is also why it's really important that we ensure that any animal that leaves our shelter goes to the rescue agency that it's said to go to make sure and minimize. Will this happen at some point for Laredo? Yes. And why? Because just like there are, in every realm, people do not operate, obviously, the way they should. You're absolutely right. There are bad rescues out there. And it's all across. And unfortunately with New York, and there's several other states, they're not only checked out, hopefully, by those that are sending them, but their oversight is actually the Department of Agriculture. So they have a secondary oversight. There's actually several states that do that. So when that comes up, we check things out like that as well. I know with Illinois, they have to be approved by Department of Agriculture and go through an annual inspection. There's several other states that do that, but we do send a lot to Illinois, so those are secondary checkpoints. But again, this isn't something that, we put them on there, because you're right, we are desperate. We are desperate. We do not have, them leaving through adoption, which is actually a national crisis, not just with Laredo, but it is something that we do take very seriously where these animals are going. unfortunately with Laredo, because of where we are and because we have minimal rescues around here, a lot of it is going out of state or going up north. It's part of, the unfortunate part of our distance between the largest cities. But I don't want you to think that that doesn't go, unnoticed, and that we don't do our checking, especially when the applications do come through.
Like, for example, do we get records of, like, for example, Awesome Pets Alive or the other organization that is coming, Operation Kindness? Do we get any type of record? Like for example, this last one, that it was a big one, 200 animals.
Right, and
plus.
the application comes from the end shelter. It does not come from the transport. So those are two different things. You have the transport, and then you have the end rescue.
So at that point, we lose kind of contact?
No, because they still have to fill out our form. Like,
okay.
so if they're on a transport, like whether it be APA, whether it be Operation, like whatever, the actual end rescue is the one that's on file, not the transport agency that's actually transporting the animal. That's not how it works.
So we do have a chance, we can have a chance to make sure, just to check that there are no clients, that they're an actual, because there are a lot of these organizations that have been caught mistreating the animals, actually are not even registered rescues. They register as nonprofits, but they're not rescues.
Well, and again, registered rescues, it depends on your state. Like, there's a lot of states you don't have to be registered. That's not a thing. There's no such thing as a registered rescue.
Right.
There are states that do mandate that, in which we have a triple measure to actually, now, with that said, we do require the 501c3 to at least make sure that the funding is going in the correct place with the 501c3 paperwork. Because sometimes that's all states mandate.
And in last week's transports, APA was just providing the transport. They didn't pull animals. They were just, providing for.
And my concern is not APA transporting, it's where they end up, where the animal ends up.
And that's, everything is on our record, that way we know, because the other thing is, especially if they're microchipped, we also wanna be able to provide, in case something happens, say it gets adopted out in New York or whatever, and they call and say, hey, I lost, if we have this dog that was a stray, what is it going back to? So we do have that on record to give, to make sure that, whatever happened, we have the correct information to give for things like microchips as well. So that's why it's really important for all of that record keeping to happen.
So you're basically saying that whoever tags, it goes to them, and APA, because what
APA doesn't tag, that's just,
it's
right.
because
Transport.
previous,
Yes.
that I know, APA will, transport, but it will go into APA and they will decide where to distribute. Is it different now?
Yeah, it's like at the end area is the agency that we have on record for actually tagging.
Okay, good, because before it was all animals would go into APA, they would do whatever health certificate they needed to do, and from there they would distribute.
No, and I think the change, we have a little bit more availability because we're the ones doing the health certificates, and we're the ones prepping so that it might be a layover, which normally but that's it.
For the flights.
Right.
For the flights.
But because we're doing the health certificates, we also have to have a destination. So.
Okay. Well, it's good to know. It's good to know that we actually know where the animal is gonna end up, and that we have an opportunity to make sure that they're legitimate organizations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's crucial, because every life counts.
And we do get a lot of updates.
All rescues, I think, and any of us that we do it on our own,
And there's been a few that we've turned away.
And Dr. Lopez is doing your health certificates?
Yeah, that's why he's not here right now.
No, APA still does some of
The rabies vaccines and the health certificates. He actually texted me right before. I have so many. Could you? No, go ahead. Because I can't leave without them. So yeah.
Now, APA is still doing health certificates for the Dog is My Co-Pilot flight. They have a facility in Elgin, Illinois, outside of Austin, and that's where they do the gift certificates, the health certificates, and because they have their own flight hub now. So the animals spend the night they get their health certificates, and then the animals are already tagged, and the shelter already knows where those animals
Well,
are
and I
going.
will say, especially for flights, I know like the difference, I used to work with, other flight organizations, and sometimes they have their own requirements, like the flights themselves.
Yes.
So there's a lot that, hey, it might be okay on this flight, but this flight's gonna require this, it all depends on what organization is actually doing the flights themselves. So, that does not surprise me that, this happens here, cause again, every flight transportation is a little, and that's also dependent on where the end flight is in the airport that they're stopping at.
It is very scary. Just this month, there was like 3 major reports of.
And that's not surprising, to be honest with you. Again, I've been in this field for 20 years. I don't think there's any jurisdiction that I've ever been in that hasn't had, a handful of rescue agencies that are not performing the way they should, we'll say.
But if
To
we
say it
can-
nicely.
if we can say one or,
Just like everybody else, they get inundated, and sometimes, and it's not an excuse, but they get over their head, or they start to veer from the capacity that they do have to house animals, and again, it's not an excuse, it's no different than hoarding situations, or sometimes you have people who want financial kickbacks, there's a million excuses that they can give, but I don't think I've ever been in a jurisdiction that has not experienced that type of situation, so it's out
We
there,
just need to be careful.
yes.
But do come with my, I'll volunteer if you need help tracking down to make sure that they're going to, again, a legitimate, good organization that will be doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, and I'm actually still trying to open up in other states, like the start of, and a lot of the times it's word of mouth, so you start utilizing this area, and then they say, oh my gosh, these dogs are amazing, so then they refer to here and here and here, and when that happens, absolutely, we'll take you up on that.
Alright, any further discussion then? Moving on to subsection B, discussions and make recommendations regarding the animal safety on the AOC's trucks.
I added that one too, and that was brought up by a concerned citizen regarding the artificial turf that is used on the trucks, that they can really get so hot that it's even sometimes hotter than the asphalt.
They do spray them down, like
And
do spray
there are
down.
ways that you
Yeah.
can keep those, cool in order for them not to
Yeah.
hurt the animal, because they literally can even melt if they're left under the sun, and unfortunately here in Laredo,
I
the
know,
weather doesn't
5,000
help,
degrees.
because even under the shade, everything gets super hot. So that was just a concern regarding that, if we are aware that
We are
it
aware,
can be very dangerous,
no, absolutely,
and that we need to
absolutely,
keep those things cool, especially that the wrought iron around them, the
I know.
metal. And this is totally something different, but I don't know if it's in the plan of maybe getting better trucks,
we have
for-
two in the pipeline, and
vans.
then, 2 in the pipeline for trucks, and not the old school.
not like the way they have them right now.
No.
No, yeah, those are
No, those are,
hard for them,
The-
and
I will-
also tough for the animal.
I will tell you, when I drove up and I saw that for the first time, I was taken back. Like, I'm not gonna lie, right? Like those are not suitable for animal transportation in any way, shape, or form. This is actually the only jurisdiction that I've worked in that has had them. We either have the box trucks or the vans. I know that while it's definitely moving forward with the transport van, we have 2 other vehicles to replace the metal ones. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's through a specific fund that we're waiting on, again, government, not really our area, on releasing specific funds for that, because a lot of our trucks are under fleet, so they're not necessarily even under our department, so we're waiting for, the fleet oftentimes, and it's the lowest bid, and it's this, and it's this. So they go through there really long process, right?
There's so much need at.
Yep, and then eventually, when the funding is released there, the fleet gets the vehicles that are necessary for it. But it's not necessarily under, just because we're animal services, it's not necessarily under our division. So we do also work very, very well with other divisions to try to get that going, but I know it's their fleet's working on it.
Good
But
to-
those are fleet vehicles, basically. I mean, we're all under the same division, but it's not an animal service, yeah.
Fleet is gonna buy the whole package for all the city vehicles and they just gonna distribute after that. So
Yeah,
But you would, it's in upcoming, that
Yeah.
you will
Yeah.
get new vehicles.
and
Because-
two are
two,
further along.
they already on construction.
Because right now, I mean, if you go into and search for these type of vehicles, most of them are, if they're covered, they have the fiberglass, which is great
Just,
for colder.
I want to remind you that this turf that we put, it was because of in the past, you all make a recommendation to put something on the
Yes.
metal plate because it was,
Yes,
It was
too
metal.
hot.
this was just something that we can.
Well, and turf you can spray down, but the thing is, like, and that's, and again, because of the material, and yes, you're right, it can melt. I've worked, like, most of the play yards are artificial turf, in other areas, so we had a system put in to spray them down and stuff like that. And it is better than, but we also, because of the material, it's sanitizable. Whereas if we put stuff in like a carpet or something that might not get as hot, you can't sanitize it from animal to animal, it's just gonna harbor, it could have distemper, it could
What
have
about
parvo.
the cooling mats or pads?
Again, we have to work on getting our industrial washer and dryer, which is in the works.
No, well, there's several out there, and of course, it probably has to do with budget, but they're made out of, in order to maintain a neutral temperature.
But they're porous, that's the problem, they're porous. So it'll,
To disinfect them,
Yeah.
it will not be practical.
correct.
And going back, it was recommended like 3 years ago when we asked because it was just, they were just a metal and we did ask, for
I did
some.
not even, realize that they were there, but, again, somebody brought it up to my attention, and then I did realize that, yes, it is true, it is,
But
it
they-
gets super hot.
That, and they can, and again, it's meaning that we have to make sure things are able to be sanitized. And like, so there are other things that overcome it, like doing the spray, it's like a little, just a sprinkler system for the, but that is something that they keep in mind when they're driving around. And trust me, I'm pretty sure, because they have to do that, they are really looking forward to switching out vehicles when they come in.
And going back to the pads, some of them are made of gel, so dogs can tear them up, right? And chew on them, and you have a mess. So
It's good
You have
to have, just to have options, but if it
I mean, all things considered, best option is the new vehicles that are coming in, that are gonna be climate controlled in the back, fiberglass, completely sanitizable. That's
Right.
obviously the best case scenario, right? So, but that's been in the works for a little bit, but at least we have two going through that are actually being outfitted, for the back of the fiberglass portion. Because that's a separate company than just the vehicle itself. So it's like two different, yeah.
And actually, a van would be also possible, like for example, whenever y'all leave the traps out there,
So-
are you transferring?
So you're right, vans are a little bit more costly because it's not just the van itself. So like when you do like a large transport vans, you can have it like a blank slate in the back, right? Because you can stack properly, right? Stuff in your vehicle. When you do for animal services, that's not exactly how you have to
It will
outfit
work.
it. Yeah, so that outfitting is completely separate as well. But it tends to be a little bit more expensive, and I jumped in at the tail end of this budget cycle. So next year, trust me, I actually prefer the vans because it's a lot easier and less stress on the animals to get them in and out, like hands down. They might be considered a little dorky to drive, but especially for officers' backs too.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Because
it's,
they have to lift the
yes,
animal all the
yeah.
way to the cage.
and because it's like this, you can actually, whether it be on a leash or a catch pole, if you have to use a catch pole, it's a slide right in. It is a slide right in. So
Yeah.
that's my preference, but again, it is a little bit more costly, so.
Moving on to subsection C, discussion and make the necessary recommendations regarding the current procedures that an ACO officer follows when attending a call pickup for strays.
That was awesome. And this one has to do with, whenever
Yep.
they're attending a call and they have to trap or catch, the dogs, I guess my concern here is if they're, in mind, they have the concern about being efficient on the first attempt.
So here's what I'm gonna say. You're absolutely right in terms of efficiency. If we could or we couldn't, let's not put any addresses out there.
No, of course
Um,
not.
But I will tell you, the first 3 calls we did get to that address was because of feeding, and the neighbors were calling because that feeding was attracting the stray dogs. The first 4 times we went out, when we got there were no dogs. Like we didn't even see them. It wasn't until time 5 and time 6, both of which officers couldn't even get close to the animal. The owner of the home was resistant to put up the traps, because I think there's a family dynamic going on there as well, in terms of you have half of the family feeding, half of the family wanting them, some of the family doesn't want them. We have the neighbors upset because the food is attracting their animals to the yard. It was a whole thing. And then when we were actually even able to put up the trap, we found that the owners were closing the trap. So as far as
Because the cats were getting
it's
trapped.
what that's not what we were told, but it's okay. The whole thing in that situation, I feel that it was working against what we were attempting to do. Because again, the call out there was actually a complaint, the first 3, I think, a complaint against that homeowner for the purpose of feeding because it's attracting stray dogs. Now you have a couple problems going on there as well. It's on the outskirts, so all the territory around that is Webb County, right? And you have a pocket that's kind of right across the major street that has really bad stray dog problems, like really bad. It's not our jurisdiction, but we are finding that these guys are, especially when there's food out, coming and grazing, we'll say, on said food. But I understand why there is a general appearance of lack of efficiency, but I will say that you have a neighborhood, or at least a house, divided on how that situation should have been rectified. And I think even inside the house was working against each other when we were going out.
Yes,
And
it was quite a case. Yes.
But again,
But more than anything, and, again, and I was not gonna refer to a specific case. I was gonna refer to, for example, I was thrilled, to see it and on Facebook, that y'all had spent time actually taking out kittens out of a drain. I mean, that was great, but again, I think the community expects the same for every case, that we give our 100%, it's planned, we get it done and it's done, instead of having to go again and again.
And I think, I think you're right, and again, we have to have the cooperation of the community in order to do so. I can guarantee you that people who have tried to sometimes catch stray dogs find that traps sometimes are the only way to get them, depending on if they're owned, come up. Sometimes street dogs, they're smart. They are smart, right? And a lot of the times, it's not even about getting them, it's even about seeing them by the time the officers get out there. But what I would like to point out is, the complaints were, we don't pick up animals, we're not doing this. 7 times we were called out, and 7 times we responded. So at the end of the day, that needs to be noted in terms of, yeah, it wasn't quite efficient, but the cooperation necessarily wasn't quite there. However, all 7 times, so to say that we didn't treat that call as well as, or as efficient, or with as much heart as the 2 kittens, I would say is probably a false statement. Because 7 times called out, 7 times out there. Now, when I started, your big thing was officers just don't respond. And I think that that is giving them, they are doing a great job. 7 times called out, 7 times they went, and eventually, obviously, with some assistance, when we could all agree on actually removing the dogs, they were removed. But 7 times they went out, because they were called 7 times.
Anything further on item C? Moving on, subsection D, address member concerns regarding dogs leaving the shelter with ticks and fleas and suggested strategies to mitigate the issue.
I agree with this. I am right on the table with this one. It was, I think, 2 weeks ago, when the last meeting, we had just received, like, the day of that meeting, the shipment of, Simpatico? Yeah. So before, obviously, we were using a different brand, I won't mention it. We found it wasn't working. Since then, so that's a 2-week time frame, we have gone through, reapplied, but we might have missed some that were in the vector stage. I just mentioned it, I'm sorry. The medication we shall not mention stage, to the Simpatica stage. We have also, now, they hooked up iPads to the little carts, right? So as these medications, as we're doing the monthly preventatives, they're actually putting it into PetPoint real time. We got it hooked up to their little, because we're trying to make it easier. They're little push carts, so that when the time comes for, we can document that it actually happened. We can monitor, to make sure that the Simpatica is working, and that it, at least before it goes to rescues or on transport or wherever, that we do have the documents right there, and it will be printed out, so there's not as much human error in terms of, and we are auditing whether or not, we are auditing to make sure that just because it's in the computer system, it was placed on the animal. So we do have kind of that oversight going on as well to make sure that we're just not putting it in the computer system and they're actually getting it. But I agree with you. Like, ticks are, especially ticks, it's real.
It happened to me when I brought back the golden retriever puppy. It had so many.
And I believe, I'm not sure when it was, but we have to be careful with the chemicals that we use, obviously, because shelter. But there is some, doesn't quite work as well for the grounds as if you did hardcore chemicals, but obviously that's not something that we can do. But that is something that's also done to spray to make sure the environment itself is less infested. But again, we have to be really careful, and a lot of times, just like any type of pest control, like, you have to be so careful with what you use, even as a pet owner. But to have that many in one area, you have to really die down the type of chemicals that you utilize.
Who brought up that point, that added it to the agenda? Is that what they, I don't know who brought that.
I think
Me?
that Angie-
Oh, you did, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other discussion then? Moving on to the last item, E, a review of member concerns as to why female and male dogs are kenneled together, especially if they're 5 months old.
I brought that one.
Yeah.
Because I see that when I go to the shelter to do the videos and pictures to send them to the rescues.
And sometimes if they're in together to reduce stress, and we talked about this.
Yes, I know.
I mean, do you want me to, or are we good?
Yeah.
It's up to you. It's up to you. I mean, I don't mind addressing it, but
It would be nice to address just,
if there are animals that come in together, And again, we know that if they're not in heat, if they're not, like you said, we go over certain things, but to reduce the stress of separating sometimes, so that there's the comfort of the other animal with them, do we make exceptions? Yes. Does it happen actually a lot? Because there's a lot of times we don't just pick up one dog, you get a little gaggle of dogs. Just to reduce some of the stress, do we try to pair them up? Yeah. Does it always work that way? No. But if there are, if we see some frolicking, I'll call it, that's definitely time to separate, obviously. But we do find that with as stressful as that environment is, separating them like right off the bat is probably not the best thing. They'll start breaking down in the kennel that much faster. So.
Alright. Then moving on, is there a motion that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Gonzalez, second by Ms. Solis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's lunchtime.